Salvatore Miki. My name is Noddy7, General of the Albatross Legion, strategy game streamer and YouTuber. We are back today with another episode in our EU4 Beginners Tutorial Series. And today, we're going to start off with our very first country guide. And we'll be playing as none other than the popular choice for beginners, Castile. So the plan that I want to get with these country guides is kind of to give new players an idea how to start off a campaign, the strengths and weaknesses of the faction, early game strategies, the mission tree, any country specific early game events that heavily influence the campaign, popular and good idea groups, and a bit of a discussion around the country's national ideas. What's important to remember throughout these guides, as I plan on doing a number of different countries, is going to be that every game's different. So while I can give people tips and make them aware of things that happen and all that sort of stuff, it's designed to familiarize people with the country and the way to play. Every game's different. Things will always evolve and change for every single game differently. So there's always different ways to play the game, right? So, we're going to start off with a general overview of Castile. Castile is a very strong power at the start of the game, with some strong events and missions, which really lend themselves into making Castile a real powerhouse in Europe. The best part about Castile is they can generally be played in two, or kind of three, different ways. You can basically ignore Europe. You can ally up with some strong nations, get some good friends, ignore Europe, and then basically you either go full colonial or you can go ham on the North African nations. The third option is to just basically get stuck in and fuck shit up, which I love. Castile stands at a very good spot to ruin France's day early in the game. With the right allies, you can declare early wars on France, who usually end up being a European superpower, and you can wipe them out and really reduce their strength very early in the game, which basically ends any competition you have in Europe. Once they're dead, you can start either mucking around in the HRE or just wait for your PU mission over Austria, and then you're really away laughing. The world's your oyster if France is gone. France does usually start, although you can see in this one they've started as a rival. They do tend to start pretty friendly towards Castile most of the time. So that is also an option as befriending them and not dealing with them, basically. Castile's national ideas. They've got a decent set of national ideas which synergize with both of these playstyles. While the national ideas are primarily focused on colonial expansion, the morale, army tradition, and decay, and missionary strength all lend themselves to a more conquest-heavy game. But you can see, you've got a colonist here. You've got the colonist here. You've got the missionary strength, some army tradition, global settler increase there. So there's a bit of both. Castile's main strength is definitely their colonial prowess, with their national ideas giving them a couple of boosts. However, their ideas do allow them to form quite a strong military nation to match most others. Particularly that 15% morale is almost as good as the French Elan. Another one of their strengths is their very defensive position in Europe. They're quite geographically isolated, which means you can either get involved or not. As I said earlier, you can find some good allies in Europe and basically just ignore Europe, only getting involved when your allies pull you into wars, or you can really get stuck in and you can fight France early and really make an impact on this part of Europe. Their only real weakness they suffer from is their terrible starting monarch, who's a 1-1-2, and their heir, who is a 0-0-0. However, this can be turned around quickly by some of the events we'll talk about soon. Added to this, if you do decide not to fight France early, you are kind of limited with expansion options. You don't really want to fight Aragon or Portugal because you should end up subjugating both of them. So really your only option is sort of Granada and then the North Africans. And yeah, if you ally France, you don't really want to head up this way. Another weakness is that they do lack in some areas their national ideas. There's no core and cost reduction, which hurts a heavy expansion playstyle. They're lacking any combat ability or discipline. So if you do decide not to go colonial, you kind of waste quite a few strong national ideas as well. So the next part we want to talk about with Castile is events and missions. So there are a number of events to be on the lookout for when playing as Castile, and the first and probably most important is Iberian Wedding. So this can trigger when Castile and Aragon have different gender rulers, which we don't at the moment. Basically, when the event fires, it has to be before 1500, and it puts Aragon as your subject, and also if they've kept Naples, you get Naples as well. Another great early game event, which ties into the Iberian Wedding quite well, is Isabella of Castile event. So this can fire as long as you're not in a civil war, and it gives you a very young female heir who is very good stats, and it increases your chances of getting the Iberian Wedding because you've obviously got a female heir. The next bigger in-game event we want to look at is the Burgundian Inheritance. So this event has received a lot of changes over the years, but Castile's still in a really good position to inherit the Burgundian Inheritance early in the game. The rules of the event changed really recently, but basically Burgundy has a chance of choosing Castile if you're married to them and have good relations. Unfortunately, it's still up to the AI to choose you over Austria or France. However, you can probably save scum it to try and get the event when Charles the Bold dies. So you can see here, if we just quickly tag switch to Burgundy. So currently, what is it showing me? Currently Charles is in charge. So if we kill Burgundy, you can see the Burgundian session. We are married to Castile, which is why they get this option here. So if we just have a quick look at Debug Mode, it'll show that there's quite a weighted chance that they will choose Castile. So if we select that, it will put Burgundy as a subject of Castile. So you can see we've got Burgundy in a PU. There is another rare event which can fire with the Burgundian Inheritance as well, which will fire if Austria. So if the AI chooses Austria, and then you are married to Austria and you are heirless, you can get an event which they give you an Habsburg heir, but they also cede all the lowlands to you as well. The event is called a very strategic marriage. If we take a look at some of the missions for Castile, they have some very powerful missions in their tree. A large part of this tree focuses on colonial expansion, giving claims over, parts of the New World and parts of India and Southeast Asia and Western Africa as well. So those missions and those claims and stuff just lend themselves really nicely to that colonial gameplay if you do go down that road. The other really strong part of the Castilian and Spanish mission trees is once the Iberian Wedding fires, you get this one which gives you a permanent CB for a personal union on Portugal. So literally, once you get Aragon under PU, you get a mission which gives you a PU claim on Portugal. So you can literally have Aragon and Portugal as subjects fairly early in the game usually. One note about this is, personally, I think the best time to PU Portugal is actually after they've taken colonial ideas, because if you PU them or subjugate them before they've taken colonial ideas, they actually won't choose them. And having them as your little colonial colonizer is actually really powerful. So personally, I prefer to wait for them to take colonial ideas before you personal union them. If we switch over to Spain quickly, we see the extended mission tree they get, which includes the mission which gives them a personal union CB on Austria. And we also get another one on England, you can see there. So basically, Spain as a nation can get a PU on Aragon, Portugal, England, and Austria. So quite a strong set of subjects you can set yourself up for within Europe. So now, to the crux of the matter, the strategy. What is the best strategy for a Castile player to start the game? As I said earlier, it really depends on how you want to play things. If you just want to ignore Europe and play a chill colonial game, go for it. It's real simple. Europe generally leaves you alone. You'll usually get Aragon without even really trying. Just use them as a buffer, a bit of an extra power boost. Focus on getting exploration early and just start colonizing as far and wide as you can. However, if you decide you want to go the aggressive route, I generally would recommend ignoring Navarra. Aragon usually gets a PU over them, or someone else will subjugate them, but it's really just not worth the hassle. It's usually worth trying to get rid of your crappy air pretty early, so you can disinherit Enrique early in the game. You have two early game options. You either make friends with France, as you can see, they don't like me in this one, and you can make friends with them and try and PU them, or you can just crush them early. If you go with the befriend option, ally and marry them, royal marriage Burgundy to try and fish for the inheritance, royal marry Austria if they'll have you. Once the wedding in fires with Aragon, wait for Portugal to take colonial ideas. And then once they've taken colonial ideas, I would PU Portugal as well. And then you basically got Aragon and Portugal as subjects, and you're sitting pretty. If you get lucky enough to get the inheritance as well, you end up with the Low Countries and part of Burgundy as well. You're in a really good spot early in the game to pretty much do whatever you want in Europe. You can take over Northern Africa, you can head into Italy, and you can even start messing around the HRE if you want. If you decide to go after France early, I would marry England, ally England, Burgundy, and Austria if possible, and basically declare on France with your friends. Try and take some provinces off them to release Gascony if you can. They usually got some good cores you can release. Basically, between getting the wedding and then getting Portugal as a subject, you focus on dismantling France with your friends, and you can pretty much do whatever you want. Like, you've removed this such strong power from this part of Europe that the world's your oyster. Remember, whichever way you play it, you need to be aware of the surrender of main event, which puts France and England at war with each other. If you're going to befriend one or the other and start a fight, it needs to happen before the event. Because when the event fires, they go to war to each other and you'll have to choose sides. It's also worth noting that there's not really any point going after England or Austria, because you're going to PU both of them when you end up forming Spain. Once you have Aragon and Portugal as subjects, if you've also got the BI, you're just in such a strong position to really just do whatever. It's easy for you to clean through Italy, take over a lot of these miners. You can head into Greece, you can fight the Ottomans if you want. You can head into Northern Africa and fight all these guys who are usually pretty fractured and fairly easy targets. There's a couple of common things that people try if they're going to do a really world conquest or heavy expansion game. So the first one is to no CB Byzantium. As most people will know, they have a lot of cores and they usually get wiped out by the Ottomans early. So you can no CB them. No one will really care if you no CB them. You see here, no one's going to join a coalition. And then you can vassalize them and feed them back all their cores. Best case scenario in a situation like that, if you actually no CB them and you can get to Constantinople and siege it out before the Ottomans declare, If the Ottomans declare, then you vassalize them. You become the defender in that war. You can invite all your allies, whoever you're allied to. Maybe it's Austria and Poland and France. You can invite them all into the war as in a defensive war, and they will help you crush the Ottomans very early in the game. Another popular strategy is Novgorod. So Novgorod usually gets beat up real early by Muscovy and reduced to 3 or 4 provinces usually in the first war, maybe a few more. But you can usually vassalize them after that first war. So again, no CBing, no one cares. They usually have no friends, so it's usually a pretty easy war to get up there. And you vassalize them and then feed their cause back from Muscovy when you get a chance. Again, the idea with both of these strategies is to cripple potential late game powerhouses, the Ottomans and Russia, before they're truly strong, meaning you just don't have to deal with them in the late game. You know, you take them out early. It's just someone you do not have to deal with later on in the game. Really, once you've got your early PUs, the world's your oyster. There's no real pressure on you to colonize, as Portugal will do it for you, as well as England when you eventually subjugate them. If you eliminate France and you don't colonize yourself, you reduce the amount of competitors in the New World. It really just becomes Portugal and England. This, of course, doesn't mean you have to avoid colonization. You can take it as a later idea group just so you can join in, and it also helps if you're doing heavy conquest. Being able to throw a colonist out and conquer your neighbors is actually quite helpful. Another important thing to remember is don't bother to integrate Aragon. You actually get a free integration of Aragon if you form the Spanish nation diplomatically. You can also feed them some land to help with your coring early in the game. There is a limit on how many cities they can have, so they have to have less than 40 cities, which is just provinces. So you can't feed them too much, but you do get a free... you integrate them for free. So you could feed them some Northern African provinces and then integrate them for free. When it comes to idea groups to choose for Castile, as we touched on earlier, the obvious choices that synergize well with their national ideas is exploration and expansion, and they sit well for a colonial-focused game. However, if your intention is to play the more aggressive campaign style and not focus so much on colonial ideas, diplomatic and influence are always good Diplo idea groups to take. Diplomatic gives you extra diplomats, Diplo rep and Diplo relation slots, and influence will help you integrate those large PU subjects you'll most likely end up with. For admin ideas, administrative is always good for the core and cost reduction, and religious to help you convert any heathen land you take, and also, of course, for the Deus Vult CB at the end. When it comes to military idea groups, offensive, defensive, and quality all stack well with your national ideas. The extra morale from military and defensive stacks well with your national idea. Offensive gives some discipline. Quality gives you some combat ability, as well as some further discipline. These are all good idea groups to go well with any Castile game. And that pretty much sums up all you need to know about the early game as the mighty Castile. They are possibly one of the strongest nations in the 1444 starting position. And a lot of their strengths comes from flexibility around what you want to achieve with the campaign. Whether it's just chill out colonial empire or a crushing aggressive world conquest, Castile could be the nation for you. Without a doubt, their flexibility is one of the biggest things that makes them a popular faction and very fun to play. The main thing to remember with all these guides going forward is that it is just a guide. I can't tell you exactly how your campaign will go, as every campaign evolves differently. But what I have tried to do is give you a comprehensive guide, as comprehensive a guide as possible, on how to set up Castile for a successful campaign. As always guys, if you've enjoyed the video, like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below if you have any questions or even suggestions for future nations to undergo the same treatment Castile has here. And as always, I'll see everyone in the next video. Vale!